from the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, day 10 of the regime. Some headlines from this week. Jim Acosta of CNN has resigned. I don't know if you heard the story, but generally speaking, CNN has decided to play nice with the Orange Menace and give plenty of MAGA voices airtime. So they're kowtowing, they're being fearful, they're not doing their job as journalists holding power to account. CNN has buckled, and Jim Acosta wasn't happy about it, and he pretty much stuck with his what he saw as his job, his duty as a journalist, as an American, as a professional, to continue to be pretty harsh on MAGA. And CNN, that didn't fit with their new plans. So they didn't fire him exactly. They just sent him to the graveyard shift. And instead of accepting that insult, he announced this week that, well, okay, that's it for me then. Thanks for the honor of letting me into your living rooms nightly. You know, that whole spiel. He said, no, I can't do it. And he had a nice little parting speech about all of us doing our due diligence and honoring truth, speaking truth, seeking truth, not letting the tyrants win. It was a nice little speech. And now, so Jim Acosta, well-known and successful TV journalist, is off to something new. He'll have his podcast, or you'll see him somewhere. But journalism is in very bad shape right now. It's obviously one of the main targets of the MAGA fascist regime. And it's working. It's just working like a charm in many places. Of course, you and I have talked plenty about Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post and Zuckerberg at Meta. Everybody, social media, tech bros, legacy media, print, they're falling in line. You can still find it. Oh, in fact, here's a suggestion of what you can do. Be more discriminating in your choice of media. I still go to legacy media. I go to the cable guys sometimes, see what they're talking about. I definitely go to the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and, the big guys. Sure. But I always do it with my eyes wide open, The reason I go to them is because they have the resources. They do have journalists out covering actual news. But you have to go in very aware of hidden agendas. And you can do it. If you're a smart person, you can do it. It shouldn't be a problem. You just have to be skeptical of everything, especially when it comes to what they're covering, what they're not covering, any opinion that seeps into what should be a straight news story. So you can do it. You're smart. You can handle it. But in addition, well, I shouldn't say in addition, your main source, I'm going to suggest, as I've taken to now, for many years, my main source is always non-corporate news. So that's Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, or it's Axios or ProPublica, or any one of, there are lots of sources out there. They're really not hard to find. And there are plenty of good podcasts out there. I've recommended before, and I'll remind you about Howie Hawkins, who hosts Green Socialist Notes, I think it's called, podcast. There again, speaking of the mainstream, I check in with Pod Save America, but believe me, I am always 100% aware of where these guys are coming from. They are straight establishment, capital D Democrats. I know exactly what their agenda is. I know what their mindset is. They're good, honest people. See, that's the thing. You don't have to vilify. I don't vilify the Pod Save America guys. I just know their shortcomings. So yeah, when you go to the mainstream, just be skeptical and have your eyes wide open and your ears wide open. But get most of your information from non-corporate media and you'll be much better off. You'll get information that you won't get from the other guys. You'll get analysis that you won't get elsewhere. So just those couple of small suggestions, and you can find others. The retribution, I will be your retribution, the whole line, that's happening here in the first 10 days in full force. Regardless of what they say in their confirmation hearings, as soon as they get the chance, Pam Bondi hasn't even been confirmed by the full Senate yet, I don't believe. I think that happens, well, maybe by the time you hear this, she will be. I think that maybe happens tomorrow. But the point is, even before she sits down at her desk, they've already announced they're going to be, quote, investigating the investigators, something that was promised and expected. Anybody at DOJ? Certainly the Jan 6 committee, the congressional committee. So the investigation of the investigators has begun, or at least has been announced. The career Department of Justice officials who were assigned to work under Jack Smith have all just been summarily fired just because they did their jobs. Anything that had to do with the investigation of the Orange Menace, anybody who had any part in that at all, just gone, fired. Again, career civil servants, experts in their fields, the top people in their profession. They were given an assignment, they did their job to the best of their ability, and for that, they're fired because the Orange Menace is on his little retribution tour. It's happening at the Department of Defense. The joke, Pete Hegseth, who promised up and down to take politics out of the military before he does anything else, his very first act as Department of Defense Secretary is to, this is so petty, so small, take down the painting of General Milley, who was the chair of the Joint Chiefs, who got on the wrong side of the Orange Menace, and he didn't like him. Yeah, apparently in the Pentagon, there's this great wall and all the chairs of the Joint Chiefs over the years, since I think 1949, if I remember correctly. That's when that position came into being. Yeah, all the portraits all lined up. And no, just took it down. And not only that, they're going to, I guess they're going to investigate him, maybe demote him in rank. I'm not sure exactly what they can do to him. Joe Biden did give Milley, along with dozens of other people, that preemptive pardon. So they can't prosecute him, but they can make his life hell. They can demote him. Can they still court-martial him? I'm not sure if a pardon applies to a court-martial. Somebody smarter than me can tell me. But what they did do was they took away his security detail. And they took away his security clearance. Oh, those security clearances, man, they're handing those out like candy to their own people. And anybody they don't quite trust entirely, they're pulling back their security clearances. So Milley has no more security clearance. And most importantly, he has no security team. You know, you get security around you. You get protection, especially for somebody like Milley, who was in on the planning and execution of the assassination of Iran's Soleimani. Remember that? So he's got basically a price on his head from Iran, and the Orange Menace says, oh, okay, you're on your own. You can buy your own security. You're done with us. Today, I'm recording this Wednesday evening. You're going to hear this later, obviously. But today, from my perspective, was the confirmation hearing, the Senate hearing for RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr., for Health and Human Services. Plenty of bad things to say about RFK, mainly about his attitudes regarding vaccines. He's been all over the map. He claims up and down that he's not anti-vaccine. He's just pro-science and pro-safety. And it's really very dangerous. I see no way he's not confirmed. I really think he will be confirmed. The only way he's not confirmed is if some right-wing zealots in the Senate decide he's too pro-abortion. I think that would, of all things, that might be the only thing that keeps him out. The whole vaccine thing doesn't seem to be a problem for the senators. The hearing today, I have to tell you, and I'm going to make some people very happy and others very angry. I think he really came out of this hearing today looking great. I think the Democrats didn't lay a glove on him. I think anybody watching who didn't already have their mind made up, or maybe they're, any kind of low information person who just kind of, today was all the information they had. I think he won with a knockout in round one. I don't think it was close. This might make my regular listeners unhappy with me. RFK appears to be really devoted to his mission. And I think he is. And part of that mission aligns with my mission. He and I are in sync in a lot of things, especially when it comes to chronic disease. He points out rightly that when he was a kid, that wasn't a problem in the United States. There wasn't widespread chronic disease like we have now. Obesity and heart disease and diabetes and all sorts of things, cancer. The numbers are just through the roof compared to when he and I were kids. And he places a lot or most of the blame on things like Big Pharma and their overemphasis on drugging us up every chance they get and just making money. He swings a very heavy bat at big food and the dozens and dozens of chemicals in every morsel of so-called food we eat. So he and I are in complete alignment on a lot of this stuff. Now, I don't know how much he could get done under an Orange Menace administration, under Republican leadership in the House and Senate. We've seen the leadership style where the Orange Menace doesn't rely on the regular mechanism of government. He just makes decrees like a king. And so if RFK just jumps on that bandwagon, like, one of the princes to a King Orange Menace, and they just start issuing fiats and orders and proclamations, because that's the way they do it. I don't know. Maybe they can make a difference. Could they? Is it possible that they could bring big food to its knees and get all these chemicals out of our food? I mean, it seems impossible. But then a lot of things seemed impossible before the Orange Menace came around. So I guess what I'm saying is this style of leadership and of just not caring about the process, just declaring laws like you're a king. If RFK were to do this in these areas, maybe. So I have very mixed feelings about the guy. The problem is, of course, the problems are obvious. I don't know if I have to repeat those, but I guess I should after what I've said here. The problems are obvious. He seems to have no respect at all. And there's a paradox happening here. He has no respect at all for science, even though that's his big rallying cry. I just want good science. That's what he says about vaccines. I'm not anti-vaccine. I just want good science. But the thing is, when the science shows him to be wrong, well, then he's quite selective. So he does definitely have a problem. RFK has a huge problem with lying, with basic honesty. He's either lying to himself, lying to us, lying to others. I don't know what's going on in his head. It's like the Orange Menace. It's hard to figure out what's going on in these guys' heads. But he has a very definite problem with the truth. If the science shows him to be wrong, he doesn't like to accept that. He just wants to ask more questions. And that's the whole conspiracy theory excuse. Well, I'm just asking questions. He loves that. I'm just asking questions. He said that several times today. So RFK, I don't know. We're going to have to see what happens here. And we'll have to hold his feet to the fire, and we'll have to, do our due diligence and holler loudly when bad things happen. But, it's so hard when he's just singing my song. And he is. And he's in perfect tune and in perfect rhythm on things like chronic disease and all the chemicals in big food and big pharma. And the way the large corporations, the food and pharma and et cetera, are compromised in league with the federal agencies that are supposed to govern them, watch them. Yeah, there is a revolving door across government, not just in health and human services area, but across all areas of government. There's this revolving door between the industries they're supposed to regulate and the agencies themselves and the lobbyists. And so there's all of that. And this is one of his big talking points. And yet, trying to figure out RFK is like watching a ping pong game, just back and forth. Because even though he rails about the revolving doors and the agencies being compromised by the relationship with the industries, all great criticism, but then at the same time, the guy's not poor. The guy's got money. And how has he made his money? So he's an interesting dude, to say the least. And that's not even getting to the whole vaccine thing, which there doesn't seem to be much controversy, in my mind at least, when it comes to the vaccine issue. He said everything. He's been on every side of the vaccine issue as far as his statements. But if you look at his whole career, the last 20, 30 years, it's pretty much impossible to deny that he's anti-vax. Or at the very least, he's dangerous because millions upon millions of dopes can use his words. They can cherry pick. Again, he said everything, so they cherry pick what they like and then use that to justify, not getting their kids the measles vaccine or the polio vaccine, for God's sake. So I agree with the harshest critics. I think RFK in that role of Health and Human Services could mean lives, many lives, hundreds, thousands of lives. It's that dangerous, especially when it comes to vaccines. If he had every success regarding the earlier stuff, the chronic disease, the big food, big pharma, if he had 100% success in that area, he might save thousands and thousands of lives. So I'll just leave it at that. I really believe he's going to get the job. I don't know how long he'll last. But as long as he does, we have to do with RFK like we have to do with everything right now. And that's keep an eye on him, holler really loudly when bad things happen. As I've been stressing the last couple of episodes, it's up to us now. We are all we've got. Because we don't have the Democrats, they just continue to disappoint. You know how the Democrats are responding to this? They're fundraising. Are you getting fundraising emails? I am. That seems to be their main response, is to send me an email to tell me how horrible the Orange Menace is and to ask me for money. That's their response. Well, okay, let's just take advantage of America falling down the toilet. There's a good chance for us to make some money, to fundraise on this. The leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, they get behind a podium, give their little milquetoast speeches. And the reporting from the D.C. press corps, they're telling us that the Democrats behind doors in their little strategy meetings have decided, to use a phrase you and I have used a few times now, the Dems have decided, well, we're not going to chase shiny objects. We're not going to be distracted. But rather, we should appeal to the voters with our sound economic policies. It's also dry and boring and pointless. They've also decided, according to these reports I've been reading, that behind closed doors, the Democrats have decided together that they're going to back off from anything that's labeled woke. They're not going to get too excited about anything that's woke. Oh, transgender people no longer exist. Well, okay, that's fine. That's not our fight anymore. Oh, don't get too tied up in the immigration raids. Oh, that's just, they want us to get mad and excited about that. That's just Trump derangement syndrome. We don't want to be labeled that. So basically, the Democrats have withdrawn from the fight. But they're using it to raise money. And they're already using it to run for president. Have you noticed Gretchen Whitmer is on a book tour? She's just popping up everywhere. Gavin Newsom, the California fires are the best thing that ever happened to him because he's up and on the news everywhere. I saw Jared Polis on, I think, the NewsHour, Colorado governor. It's like, well, why do I see Jared Polis? Let's find some excuse to get him on the air. They're already running for president. This is all they do. They raise money and they run for office. That's all they do. We're all we've got. It's us now. Democrats, no, we're just going to stay positive. No, they just look weak. They are weak. Oh, sure, a few harsh words every once in a while. Going back to the RFK Senate hearings, Elizabeth Warren and good old Bernie, Sheldon Whitehouse, they're up there hollering at him, getting all tough, but they didn't land any punches. From my viewing of it, trying to be objective, like, what am I really seeing here? They didn't land a punch. To me, RFK came out the big winner today. Now, speaking of hollering, when it comes from us and people hear it, it can work. Vox Populi, the voice of the people, still has some power, believe it or not. My big warning here these last few episodes is that we have to use our voices now, because if we don't, they might be lost. In other words, our voice might be gone. They're trying so hard to entrench minority rule in every realm of government that popular opinion just becomes meaningless. Well, we're not there yet. Because this whole freeze on funding, freeze on grants and loans, all just you're not getting it. It's just, nope. You know, they're using that Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which they think, well, it doesn't, but they think that allows the president to control all funding, which it doesn't. So they're breaking the law every time they do this. They don't care. You and I have talked about this. But this last effort here, just in the last few days, talk about a ping pong back and forth. This big announcement, Office of Management and Budget memo, orders federal funding freeze on all public loans, grants, and more aid. That was just a day after they announced a freeze on all foreign aid. But then within hours, a federal judge blocks that. You can't freeze funds. And then this all happened within 24 hours. Because then just hours after that, due to public outrage and a couple of other decisions by judges, the Orange Menace regime says, okay, well, we'll rescind that order. Funds are not frozen. We're still going to review all spending. We're still going to try to withdraw any sort of funding of anything that's woke or doesn't follow our agenda, that doesn't follow the decree of the dictator. All that's still happening. But while we do that, funds can flow. And that only happened because of public outrage. You may have heard that the Orange Menace is offering buyouts to literally all federal workers, all of them. It's a Musk thing. Musk did the same thing at Twitter, if you remember. And this is coming from the Office of Personnel Management, which is basically now a Elon Musk enterprise. That agency has been taken over, the Office of Personnel Management. And it is what it sounds like. It's basically the personnel department of the federal government. So, yeah, they pulled a Musk. Said, okay, memo to every single federal employee. We will be very happy to accept your resignation. And the original reporting said, we'll give you like 8 months severance pay. That's a buyout. And I'll bet if you heard about this story at all, I'll bet that's what you heard. But it turns out the deal they're giving them is, if you agree to resign, you are free to resign, and you may work from home, which is supposed to be some big perk, I guess. It all sort of comes down to the same thing. Because they also said in this same little letter to the all federal employees, it was kind of with a wink and a nod. You can work from home for 8 months, but, it's work from home. We're not really going to keep that close of an eye on you. So basically, you can just quiet quit. It was all sort of between the lines, kind of clearly. So if you heard this story and you heard it was a buyout, it's not. It's been corrected. No, you can work from home. But then when you really look at it, yes, the original story is pretty much right. With a wink and a nod, you can work from home, but you don't really have to work. And we'll pay you for 8 months. And this is a way to get non-loyalists out of government. Please don't take my tone of voice, my very calm, rational tone of voice this week, to mean that things are any better or not quite as bad as we thought they were. They're worse. And getting worse literally every day. It's a dictatorship in the making, and every day it's something new. Now, the good news, let's end today with a little bit of good news. As I've already mentioned, our voice still matters. So you got to holler, you got to sign petitions, you got to call your representative, you got to write letters, you got to write emails. You got to share. I'm so tired of people dissing social media. I mean, our role in it. Yeah, I diss social media all the time as far as the algorithms and the owners and the powers. Yes. What I don't like is people telling us that to post something political is not only pointless, but it makes you some kind of a dweeb. No, I'm telling you right now, I give you my full permission and blessing and encouragement to use social media every day and to voice your concerns and to holler loudly and to use memes and do whatever you need to do. A strong presence on social media of discontent has an effect on our country. It just does. So do the things we always talk about. Write letters, make phone calls, sign petitions, hit the streets, share on social media, create your own podcast. Don't let people laugh you off the stage. No. It's still powerful. We still have power. That's the good news. The other good news, these are all executive orders. Nothing has been legislated yet except this stinking Laken Riley Act, which is horrible. We talked about that last week. No other legislation. It's going to be really, really difficult to legislate any of this. It's almost 100% executive orders right now that can be reversed on day one of AOC's presidency in 2028. Did you catch that? Well, we'll see. So anyway, that's good news. Executive orders have no lasting power, and they can all be challenged in the courts, which they are. They can all be challenged by ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, other organizations. They can all be resisted in state houses, local authorities, city governments, declaring still sanctuary cities, things like that. So we definitely still have power. They're trying to wrestle it away from us, but we still got a little bit. No, we got more than a little bit. We have power. You have to believe that, and you have to use it. If you don't use it, we lose it. There are things like the Know Your Rights workshops for anybody who's afraid of this deportation thing. That's the other thing about the deportation. Now, no, I'm not going to tell you to be calm, but I am going to tell you it's a big show. They're never going to get 11 million people. They're not going to get a tenth of that. It's literally impossible. It's just logistically impossible. For one thing, they're going to need a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars that has to be approved by Congress, and that's just not going to happen. The mass deportations are horrible in that they're terrorizing 11 million people. But the fact is they're only going to get a tiny, tiny fraction of that. Still horrible? Of course. Of course, of course, of course. But we got to keep these things in perspective and realize it's mostly a big show. It's a show of terror. Well, I'm way out of time, way over my time, actually. I have to do some editing to get this down to 30 minutes. So there it is. We'll pick it up right here next time. This episode and all others can be heard at charlespurcell.com or on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks to River West Radio, our flagship terrestrial station. Contact me, charlespurcell@gmail. Follow on Facebook. Thanks to Peter Donalds, who wrote and performed the theme song. All right. See ya.